my name's Liz, I'm the baker that sews. Welcome to my channel if you're new, and welcome back if you are a subscriber. As always, it's really lovely to have you here as I share my sewing journey. So welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be one of my Wednesday vlogs. Hopefully I've got this edited in time and it is published on a Wednesday. If it's not, it normally would be. That's why I've said it's a Wednesday vlog. Anyway, I'm going to be doing part 2 of my Q&A. So I had lots and lots of questions. I've done part 1. If you haven't seen that, I'll link it down below so you can go and check it out. But I'm going to be answering lots of your questions. So before I start answering all of your questions, I'll let you know what I'm wearing. And I'm wearing a Dressmaker's Closet nail dress in this gorgeous pastel leopard print jersey fabric that I got from, I think I got it from Stitch & Ink. I've got my sapphire frills leopard print pastel earrings in, which I think go really nicely with the pastel colours on this dress. And then I've got a tie knot headband in a yellow gingham that I used following the tutorial by Juliet Oozle, which I'll link down below as well. I love the nail dress. It's got this subtle sort of puff sleeve with quite a thick band, a nice sort of curved neckline, and then it's just got this gorgeous gathered skirt, and then it's got a ruffle. I love a ruffle. If you followed me for a while, you'll know I absolutely love a ruffle. Love this fabric. It's absolutely gorgeous and it feels really comfortable and really cozy. I'll put a picture in of me wearing this outfit so you can see what I look like. But yes, it's very, very comfortable and perfect for the weekend. So I've got my notebook in front of me. I'm just going to go through and answer all of your questions. I'm going to see what the time looks like. I've got 10 questions that I thought to answer in this part of the video, and then I've got another 10 questions that I'll answer in part 3. So Karen McNeil 7546 has asked, what machine do you sew with? So I've got 2 machines. I've got my regular sewing machine and I've also got an overlocker. I'll put images in of the machines, but my regular machine is a Pfaff Quilt Ambition 2.0 and I absolutely love it. I feel like I'm still learning. There's so many stitches on there. In fact, let me have a look. It's just here. There are over 200 different stitches that you can use on the machine. I really love it because it's got the inbuilt IDT feature, which is almost like having an inbuilt walking foot. So if you're sewing slippery fabrics or quite thick fabrics, or any fabrics that might be a little bit tricky to sew with, the IDT feature really supports you sort of sewing an even stitch. It prevents the machine from skipping stitches or anything like that. I absolutely love my machine. I upgraded a couple of years ago, so I've been sewing using the Pfaff Quilt Ambition 2.0 for, I want to say like 2-3 years. Before that I had a Janome, which I loved. I've actually gifted that to a family friend who wants to learn to sew, and so I gave that to her at Christmas. And then I've also got a brother machine that I started learning to sew on right back at the beginning of my sewing journey, and I've given that to Ruby and Lola to use, and they like using that to sew little bags and skirts and things, and it's been really lovely to see them enjoying sort of dabbling in sewing. But my machine is a Pfaff Quilt Ambition 2.0, and then my overlocker is a Brother Lock 743DS overlocker machine. I find it really easy to use. I don't think I use all of the features on my overlocker. I literally use it just to finish the edges. I do need to learn a little bit more about how to use all the different features of my overlocker. But it's a great little machine. It's just next to me in my sewing space. So if I need to go and finish any seams, I can just move along a little bit and finish off the seams. I find it a really straightforward machine to use. And I find threading the machine quite straightforward as well. So those are my machines. Debbie Scott 512 has asked, what sewing tools and gadgets do you use all the time to make sewing tasks easier? Hers is a seam gauge. So I have got a seam, I don't think you say gauge actually, I think it's gauge. Seam gauge. I have got a seam gauge. I've forgotten to pick up the sewing tools that I use on a regular basis. I'm just going to pause this video and grab them. Okay, I've picked up all of the, well not all of them because there's loads of things that I do use on a regular basis, but I have got my seam gauge, which is by Rocking Stitch. So here it is. I don't know if you can see that properly. It came in this gorgeous little cork pouch. That is next to my machine and I use that all of the time. I have also got friction pens, which I love using for marking various different things. And they're great because if you iron where you've marked on your garment, it just disappears like magic. I haven't ever found that the mark has stayed. I always find that it disappears. And I also use chalk if I can't use a friction pen, but I do find these are brilliant for marking notches and like stitch marks and darts and that sort of thing. I've got this lovely little dish that my father-in-law made for me. He's got a wood turner and he loves making like little dishes and bowls and things. And this has my clips. I don't really use pins very often. I always tend to use clips. I absolutely love them. I've got them dotted around my sewing space. And then I just keep, they're not all in here because they wouldn't all fit, but I keep a handful in here just so that it's easy for me to grab them when I need to. And then I also have like needle minders or pin cushion type thingies. This is a magnetic pin donut, and then this one we got in a So Hilly Jane box. I have these dotted around, and then I've also got this one that I got from Ethel and Joan. I have them all around my sewing space, so if I am using pins, I just said I don't use pins very often, but if I am using pins or I need to do some hand sewing and I've got needles that I need to just have close by, I use these. These are a game changer in making sure that I don't drop pins or lose my needle. Absolutely love using those. I can't remember the name of the shop of where I got this from. I'll put a picture in now. I can't believe the name has completely escaped my memory, but yes, I've always got those. Always got snips. Whoops. Couple of pairs of snips. Always got those around. These were, I feel like they were from a So Hilly Jane box. These were from Fabric Godmother, and I've got these just hung up around my sewing space. I would be lost without my snips. My trusty scissors, again, I'd be lost without them. Tape measure, I've always got a tape measure. In fact, I've got about 3 or 4 tape measures. So I've always got those in my sewing space. And then of course, I don't know what I've done with it. My trusty seam unpicker. Use these every time I sit down to do a project. Always got those on hand. My iron, obviously I always use an iron. Pressing is such an important part of your sewing. I also use a mixture of pins and also pattern weights. So I've got my donut pattern weights behind me. I've always got a mixture of those as well. And then the latest sewing, I guess it's not really a gadget, but the latest sewing tool, I've got the lovely Hayley from So Hilly Jane to thank for this, was these bobbin minders, I think they're called. So when you're sewing a project, this has been brilliant when I've been sewing up the Fibre Mood Nina dress. So when you're finished sewing it and you've still got the bobbin left, you've still got thread left on the bobbin, you put the bobbin here and then you put the cotton at the bottom, so it keeps the bobbin and the cotton together. I think that is genius. I've used these loads just to keep the two together when I'm in the middle of sewing a project. I feel like that's everything. Obviously, oh, the other thing actually. And then the other thing that I've absolutely loved using if I need to turn anything through is the Prim loop turners. So I've got a small, medium and a large. I've actually lost the small. This is the medium. But you get this plastic sort of tube which you put in, and then you use this, looks like a giant cocktail stick to poke it through, and it's brilliant for turning like straps and things. So I'm lost without those. Those are just a few of my favourite sewing tools that I always have to hand. And I've got an IKEA pegboard so I can hook things onto there. And I've got loads of little pots like this, which I keep things in as well. So those are just a few of my favourite sewing tools. Do let me know in the comments below what your favourite sewing tool is, but I'd be lost without loads of those, especially my seam unpicker and my snips. And then Annie Loves Vintage has asked a non-sewing related question, but she'd like some advice on how to prepare herself and her daughter to start nursery. She has SEN and has also got an EHCP already. So an EHCP, if you're not in the UK or you're unfamiliar with the abbreviation, stands for an Education Healthcare Plan, and it helps to support children if they have additional needs when they're starting in a nursery setting or a school setting. And an EHCP stays with the child until they reach the age of 25. So it would help them all the way through their education until they reach the age of 25. So she's asked for help and advice on how to prepare herself and also her daughter. Her problems are mainly physical, but also under-socialised. So a couple of things I would suggest as a mum, but also as a teacher, that would really help prepare yourself, but also really help to prepare your daughter. Get to know the setting. So I'm assuming you've got a nursery setting in mind, so I would really get to know them. Plan some extra visits. We're always open to having lots and lots of visits for any children that might be feeling a bit anxious. They might not have been away from you before. They might have need, they might not have need. I would say if you're feeling particularly anxious or your child is feeling particularly anxious, just get in touch with the setting. They'll definitely facilitate some extra transition visits. And that could be where you stay with them. It could just be you having a look around the setting. It could be you just spending some time in that room with them. Social stories are a great way of supporting children to understand change, particularly if there is a need there. So we use social stories with Ruby quite a lot to help her understand if there's going to be a change to her routine, or if we're going somewhere different, or there's something new that I need her to prepare for. So I talked in my Sunday Sewing catch up last weekend that Ruby's going to have some surgery in a couple of months. So we will write a social story for her just to help her understand the process, what's going to happen, and what the recovery will look like. And it's something that she can just go back to time and time again to just help prepare herself. Social stories are written quite factually as well, and very clear language, which really supports children that might have additional needs. In terms of supporting yourself, I would talk to the nursery setting about how you're feeling about your child. Communication is really key in this sense, and I would say that they will support you throughout that journey. I would also say make sure that you communicate really effectively and clearly what your daughter's needs are. We want as much information about your child before they start with us. It just helps us to ensure that all staff have had training. It might be that they need to have some training from a nurse, or they might need somebody to come in. Like we've had Makaton training, so we can use Makaton signs to support children if they have limited language. It might be that they need to adapt the setting for your child starting. So as much information as you possibly can pass on to that setting that your child will be going to, I would say is so important in helping them. Go onto their website if they've got any videos, go and watch their videos. They might have videos of the key workers reading stories. That's something that we do. We also do videos of like a typical day, so you get an idea of what that looks like. Sometimes children need to start on a gradual timetable, and that's something that you can discuss with the setting that your child's going to as well. They don't have to start on a gradual timetable, but sometimes that's what parents request, and it's also what sometimes when the child starts, sometimes we can see that actually they're finding it quite overwhelming, and we want it to be a really positive start for the child joining us. As a mum, I would say try and have someone that you can talk to about your child starting. Try and have somebody that you can go to support you through it as well, because it can be quite an anxious time. You know, my children are teenagers and they're in secondary school, and I still have moments of anxiety around them being at school and just making sure that they're happy and they're safe and they're really well supported. Your EHCP should outline really clearly what your child's needs are as well. So make sure that you're sharing that with the setting that she's going to. And I would also say if you haven't made your mind up on the setting that you'd like your child to go and visit them. Go and have a look at them when they're in action, because you really get to see what a day-to-day feels like and what it also looks like when there are children there too. If you have any questions about that, please by all means send me a message on Instagram or send me an email. My email address is thebakerthatsews@hotmail.com. I'm more than happy to try and support you a little bit more if you need any more advice and help with getting your daughter settled into her setting. But I hope it goes really, really well for you, and I hope that that information I've just shared was really helpful and useful for you. So then Elaine Marie Sews 2683 has asked, question about the Sunday trackies. Did I make the size based on measurements? Did I size up or did I size down? So based on my measurements, I was between a 10 and a 12. I went for a UK 10, and I would say that actually next time I could probably size down. They are quite a roomy make. By nature of the style, they are meant to be quite roomy. The leg shape is quite a sort of balloon shaped sort of pattern, and they are meant to have quite a lot of room in them, but I would definitely be able to size down. The 10 fits me really nicely, but if I was to size down, I don't think they would be too snug. I hope that's helpful for you. So I chose to go for the smaller size when I was looking at the measurements in terms of what they put me in. I also went off the finished garment measurements rather than the garment measurement. I find the finished garment measurements on patterns are more useful to go off than the actual garment measurements. Then Marion Matthews 9852 has asked, which pattern would I recommend for sewing dungarees using jersey fabric? So there's a couple of patterns that came to mind. I'm not sure whether you would class all of them as dungaree patterns, but they're definitely sort of dungaree jumpsuit vibes. So the first one is the True Bias Nova jumpsuit. Absolutely love this pattern. I love that there are different options, so you can sew it as a play suit. You can also sew it as a full jumpsuit. It's got pockets, which I absolutely love. There's an option for elastic on the ankles and also elastic across the waist, but there's also an option to not put the elastic in the waist, which gives you a little bit more of a sort of relaxed fit. I've sewn so many of those jumpsuits. I find them super comfortable, really lovely pattern to sew up. Really straightforward pattern to sew up as well. So I definitely recommend that one. There's also the named kilo wrap dress, which you can also make as a jumpsuit. I'm yet to make it as a jumpsuit, but lots of people that I have sort of messaged about it have said that it's a really enjoyable sew and it comes together really nicely, and also it's a really comfortable pattern to sew up. The other one is the Deer and Doe Sirocco jumpsuit. So that's more like a jumpsuit than dungarees. That is my like all-time favourite jumpsuit pattern to sew up in jersey. Definitely secret pyjama vibes. It's quite a fitted pattern. The legs are quite tapered. The bodice is quite fitted as well. It's got this faux like wrap crossover detail. That's got pockets. I really love the shape of that, and it's a really enjoyable sew. Comes together really nicely, and you can sew it in a whole range of jersey fabric. So I've sewn it in a scuba. I've sewn it in a cotton jersey, and that feels really nice. I've sewn it in, I'm trying to think of the other types of, I think I've sewn it in a velvet, a stretch velvet, and that feels really nice and feels quite dressed up as well. So you can sew that in a range, and it looks absolutely beautiful on every different body shape and size and style. I definitely recommend the Deer and Doe Sirocco. And then the other one that I have sewn up, I wasn't too keen on the finished look on me. I need to work on the fit of this, so I can't talk from experience in terms of fitting it to my body, but it was the Sew Over It Nassima jumpsuit, I think it's called. I'll put a picture in of what it looks like, but I've sewn that one up in a cotton jersey, and the bodice really gaped. It's got a V-neck, and I found that the bodice really gaped, so I just need to go back and play around with the fit of that. I liked it from the waist down, but the bodice, I need to tweak the fit. I've seen so many gorgeous versions of that jumpsuit pattern though. So that's another one that I would recommend. I hope that's been helpful. I can only talk really from experience for a couple of those. But my all-time favourite would either be the True Bias Nova jumpsuit or the Deer and Doe Sirocco jumpsuit. I love both of those patterns. And then Diane Hinksman 4283 has asked, how is the knitting going? Have I found any knitting vlogs for beginners? She'd love to find something like Tilly and the Buttons for knitting. My knitting is going okay. I'm still dabbling in the knitting. I'm still knitting just rows. So I'm currently making a scarf for my husband in this navy wool. I might grab it so I can show you what it looks like, but I'm just enjoying practicing the technique at the moment, and just making something as simple as a scarf. I'm yet to discover the equivalent of Tilly and the Buttons, which deciphers knitting patterns. There are loads and loads of YouTube videos out there, but I'm yet to come across the equivalent of Tilly and the Buttons in the knitting world. So if anyone's got any suggestions of really straightforward knitting vlogs to watch and knitting knitting channels to follow, please comment down below, and I'll share all of the knitting vloggers in my next Sunday sewing catch up. I'll share them all as suggested knitting vloggers. Let me grab the knitting so I can show you, but I'm really not getting very far because I'm knitting a scarf, so it doesn't look like I've done a huge amount, and I'm only able to do a couple of rows each night. Here it is. Doesn't look like I've done very much. I have, it's just quite small. I'm using 6mm needles, so yeah, it's going to take me a long time to knit a scarf, but I am just going to keep persevering and just practice the techniques. And when I feel really confident with those techniques, then I'll move on to learn another knitting technique. And then the next question, I'm really sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. It's there Satumi Ski, ThereSatumidajski 5219. I'm really sorry that I couldn't say your name correctly. Has asked, do you have a pattern stash? And if yes, do you purge regularly? I do have a pattern stash. It's huge. All my patterns are here in this one and in this one. And then I've also got 4 trays of patterns down here. I did purge quite recently, actually. I did go through my pattern stash and I got rid of a few patterns. I gave them to charity for patterns that I knew that I wasn't going to get round to making, or perhaps maybe my style had changed. I have got probably hundreds of patterns, and I've probably got hundreds of patterns that I haven't got round to sewing up yet. What I have found really helpful is using the Stash Hub, which is an app that you can use to store to keep a check of your patterns and also your stash. I found that a really great app for just keeping a little bit more organised and a bit more on top of all of my patterns and all of my fabrics. I haven't got all of my patterns on there yet, but I am slowly adding them, and I found that really great. Stash Hub is an app that is free if you only want to upload up to 20 patterns or fabrics. You can't upload any more than 20, or you can pay $3.99 a month, and that's for unlimited uploads of images of patterns and also images of fabrics. You can also store on there the pattern information, what fabric you need, if there's any notions that you need. And I found that part of the app really helpful when I'm out shopping for fabrics, or if I need to go and buy like a zip or something or some matching thread. I found it really helpful being able to obviously take my phone with me and have all of that information in one place, so that if I'm buying a zip for, I don't know, the I Am Sunshine jeans, I know what size zip I need for that pattern. That's been really helpful. So I do have a large pattern stash. I don't purge the patterns very often. I don't go through them very often and get rid, but I did recently go through them. I think as I've been adding them to Stash Hub, I've been coming across patterns thinking, actually, I know I'm not going to sew that pattern up. Sheila Sews has asked, what was the first garment you felt super proud of? I think I talked about this in the Q&A part 1. I think one of the first garments that I felt super proud of was the blazer that I sewed up using the By Hand London, oh gosh, what's the pattern name? Victoria blazer, because it was one of the first garments that I sewed up that I thought, this looks like a blazer, you know, and I was really proud of myself. It was the first garment that I'd lined as well, so I felt really proud of that, and I just thought, gosh, I am getting the hang of sewing, and actually I'm learning some new skills. But then there's been various patterns along the way that I've sewn up and felt really proud of myself. So learning to sew jeans, I felt really proud of myself when I learnt to sew the I Am Sunshine jeans, because there was quite a lot of fitting involved with that pattern. When I sewed up the blazer, the Friday Pattern Company blazer, I felt really proud of myself for that. When I sewed up the Kokowara Crafts nutmeg jacket, I felt really proud of myself for that. I think because there was quite a lot of fiddly techniques. And it's such a classic sort of trench look with some really cute features. So I felt really proud of myself for that. When I first sewed up the Lyra shirt dress, because I felt really proud of myself for sewing that collar detail. And I felt like the collar detail was quite neat on there as well. I've felt proud of myself when I've sewn things for my family. So when I've sewn shirts for my husband and he's actually really enjoyed wearing them. And also anything that I've sewn for my children. I just love seeing them wearing things that I've made for them. When I sewed up the rainbow bomber jacket, I was so scared to cut into that fabric, absolutely terrified to turn that into a bomber jacket, even though I really badly wanted to turn it into a bomber jacket. I put it off and I put it off and I put it off for ages, and then when I did finally cut into it and sew up that jacket, that was a really proud moment for me, because I had the fear with that fabric. So I was really proud that I actually did eventually turn it into what I had in my head. Anytime I've done like a pattern hack, or I've done like a sew recreate the look kind of challenge, and I've been able to recreate what I've had in my head, I've always felt really proud of myself with that as well. So I can't just pick one thing, but I can pick various garments that have made me sort of reflect on how far I've come with my sewing. So I hope that's answered your question. Summer NACHT08 has asked, what do you do to avoid back pain while sewing? So sometimes I'll stand and sew. I think making sure that I've got the right chair. So I've got an adjustable chair at my sewing desk, and that means that I can adjust the height. I try and make sure that it's set at the perfect height, and I try not to fiddle with that height either, but taking lots and lots of breaks, so standing up and moving around, trying to do some stretches, changing the position of me sewing. So I might have to sit at my sewing machine for a while, but then I'll get up and go and sit maybe on the sofa to do some hand sewing, or I might just give myself a little bit of a movement break, a bit like what I would adopt when I'm teaching. We get the children to have movement breaks as well. I do still end up with a little bit of back pain, so I haven't completely got it right, but yeah, just making sure that I build in break times in my sewing sessions. But I think getting the right chair at the right height for your sewing machine as well. And then the final question I'm going to ask for this section of my Q&A, because I can see the time is ticking on, is from Rebecca_Mayo, and it says, do you find pairing footwear with your colourful makes tricky? She finds it really difficult to complete the look. Yes, I do. I have got a range of jelly shoes in lots of different colours to go with different garments. I tend to find pairing footwear with my makes in the autumn winter the trickiest. I think because you're having to layer up so much. I tend to generally put on boots or put on shoes or put on trainers. In the summertime, that's when I get really excited about pairing footwear with my garments. A lot of my garments are usually quite patterned and quite bright and colourful, so it means that I can draw out one particular colour and put some jelly shoes on. And I've got jelly shoes in lots of different colours. I've just got some emerald green jelly shoes, I've got some lilac jelly shoes, I've got pink, I've got some mint coloured ones, I've got some yellow coloured ones. So quite a lot of my jelly shoes will go really nicely with my garments. But yeah, it is something that I do find tricky, because I can't have hundreds of pairs of shoes to go with every single outfit that I've got. But what I tend to do when I'm thinking about what shoes I would like to wear to go with the outfit is I tend to pick one colour from the outfit. So this headband, I've just gone with the yellow that's in the leopard print, like I've got yellow, and then I've just got my blue Converse on with this outfit because I have got blue leopard print on there. I've also got some Vans that I've got pastel colours on, so that goes with this dress as well. But quite often with my accessories or with my shoes, I'll just pick out one colour in particular and match that. It does tend to be trainers. In the winter, it does tend to be boots. And in the springtime, it does tend to be, well, spring, summer, it does tend to be my sandals or my jelly shoes. I absolutely love being able to get my jelly shoes out in the summer when it's lovely and warm. So those are all the questions I'm going to answer today. Thank you so much for sending in your questions. If you've got any knitting channel recommendations, please pop them in the comments below. If you have got any more questions that I haven't answered yet, I have got a part 3 coming, so pop any more questions down below. I'll make sure that I include them in part 3. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd really love it if you could hit that subscribe button. You'll get notified of when I bring out my next video. Thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye!